The story begins with a young woman named Claire, who decides to take part in a clinical trial for a new medication developed by the renowned Blackwood Pharmaceuticals. She arrives at an underground facility on the outskirts of the city, joining 6 other participants. One of them, Allison, who is very inquisitive and outgoing, immediately starts asking Claire a flurry of questions. Once the conversation dies down, they are called into a communal area. They soon realize that there's no internet access or connection to the outside world. Dr. Burke, who is overseeing the trial, explains that for the next 5 days, the dosage of the drug will be gradually increased, and they will be monitored closely for any side effects. Although she expresses hope that everything will go smoothly, the participants will remain in the facility throughout the trial, with no opportunities for walks or outside meetings. While they aren't thrilled about these restrictions, they acknowledge they've signed the agreement. They all take the medication before heading to dinner. One of the men, Rye, mentions that his friend participated in a similar high-stakes experiment and received $50,000 for it, noting that they are compensated well here as well. Claire confesses that this is her first time in such a trial, and the others caution her to be wary of Vanessa, as she seems a bit unstable. The experiment kicks off, and Claire finds herself frequently providing blood samples and responding to questions. By evening, she feels utterly drained, yet Allison refuses to give her a moment of privacy. Suddenly, Claire starts to feel unwell and rushes to the bathroom. When she steps back into the hallway, she accidentally collides with a mirror. A fellow participant explains that they are testing a medication aimed at helping people with insomnia, motion sickness, and related issues. He's studying to become a doctor and wanted to observe the company's processes, but now he's questioning his decision to join the trial. That night, Claire struggles to sleep, and when she ventures into the hallway, she discovers that the other participants are also experiencing insomnia. Those who have participated in trials before suspect something strange is happening here. However, Dr. Berg brushes off their worries the next morning, claiming that mild insomnia isn't a cause for concern. Amir offers to assist her, but she turns him down. 3 hours pass, and none of the participants have managed to fall asleep. Allison confesses that she feels off. Claire notices her drawings of Paul and playfully teases her about them. Meanwhile, Dr. Burke reaches to the project leader, sensing something is wrong. All the participants appear to be experiencing brain inflammation, and she questions whether the dosages administered were accurate. During this time, Claire and Allison spot lab mice behind a glass door. As they discuss the mice, their conversation shifts to more personal subjects. Claire reveals her wish to live in a cage where someone would take care of her instead of struggling on the streets. Later, Dr. Berg announces a change in the study's parameters. They now need to see how long they can stay awake. Claire undergoes an MRI scan and admits her fear of confined spaces, recalling a childhood incident where she was locked in a closet, which triggered her panic attacks. Overcome with terror, she screams, prompting them to release her. In an effort to comfort her, Allison shares that she also experienced PTSD as a child and learned to play Tetris in her mind to cope with her emotions. She encourages Claire to try the same and even hums the game's melody. Initially frustrated by Allison's insistence, Claire gradually begins to relax and eventually finds herself laughing. Later, they notice an increase in their medication dosage. Rye refuses to take his, while Paul agrees to only half of his dose. They begin to question the true nature of the experiment. Dr. Burke then motivates them. Anyone who makes it to the end will receive a $30,000 bonus. Everyone feels excited, but Claire exchanges a knowing glance with a mirror, sensing that they are among the few aware of the unfolding situation. Allison invites Claire to dance, but Claire feels something isn't quite right and suddenly battles the urge to sleep. The doctor seats everyone around a table, observing closely as they start to yawn. Later, she contacts management to report that the participants' immune systems are failing, indicating that the trial should be halted. However, they refuse her request and instruct her to increase the dosage. Meanwhile, the participants dream about how they would spend the money. Paul hopes to leave, Allison plans to return to school, while Claire simply desires to find a place to call home. Meanwhile, Amir passes by Dr. Burke's office, overhears her declaring that she refuses to continue with the experiment. After waiting for her to leave, he sneaks into her office and copies the data onto a flash drive. Claire approaches Allison, only to realize that she has fallen asleep. Blood begins to pour from Allison's eyes and nose. She collapses, convulses, and then dies. The participants are left in shock. Dr. Burke walks into the room and freezes in shock. Suddenly, a voice announces a protocol violation. The doctor rushes for the exit as the voice counts down 30 seconds to lockdown. Everyone runs after her. She manages to reach the closing door, but sharp spikes from the locks impale her. Others pulled her out, but it was too late, and Doctor died. The group stands by the door, unsure of their next move when Amir, who had fallen behind, catches up. He warns them that they must not sleep or they could end up like Allison. He's seen the scans and realizes their brains have been overstimulated beyond what is safe. If anyone falls asleep now, their brains won't be able to cope. They need to find a way out of the bunker and look for help, but the doors are extremely secured and will not open easily. The facility is locked down for 24 hours, and all communication lines are severed. Amir hands out smelling salts to help them stay awake, cautioning that they must use them sparingly. He explains the situation regarding their brain health and forbids them from even drinking coffee. Once they escape, they'll be put on immunosuppressants to slow down their brain activity. For now, all they can do is wait for the protocol to end and for the doors to unlock. They haven't slept for 100 hours, and they all look visibly unwell. Paul suggests they record messages to ensure the world knows what happened to them. Amir keeps a close eye on everyone's condition, horrified by the data he's gathering. But he keeps his feelings to himself to avoid alarming the others. Claire's condition worsens as she begins to hear her mother's voice more clearly. She records a message for her but ultimately deletes it. In a moment of desperation, she releases a mouse from its cage, but it simply returns. Time drags on. Ray runs out of smelling salt and starts begging others for some. Suddenly, Vanessa confesses her lack of belief in God and reveals that she left home because she was tired of being reminded of her sins. Claire's mother's lullaby becomes increasingly vivid. She nearly falls asleep when Marcus wakes her up, discussing his mountain hikes and expressing his belief that humans can achieve anything. Claire then sits down at Dr. Berg's computer and discovers her file, which states that she is in a desperate state, making her an ideal candidate for the experiment. She heads to the kitchen, where she finds Vanessa standing over a burning stove, mustering the courage to use the flames to fend off sleep. Meanwhile, Marcus begins to experience auditory hallucinations. He hears a whistle, follows the sound, and finds himself enveloped in darkness. In reality, Marcus dies in the same manner as Allison. The others strive to keep their spirits up. Claire burns her hand on the stove and addresses the group, reminding them that this is the end. The company won't allow them to leave. They must find a way out, or risk being trapped forever. She draws a floor plan and suggests breaking through the wall, but Amir protests and walks away. The group begins to work with the fire equipment, and after breaking through the brick, they hit a metal barrier. Tensions rise into an argument. Claire attempts to motivate them, urging them to push through the next wall. But Rai suddenly questions how Amir knew the walls were impenetrable. He mentions that he's been through many trials and that these conditions were never present before. It dawns on them that Amir might know more about Blackwood than he let on because he works for them. Paul reminds them that Amir isn't sleeping either. Claire finds Amir in Dr. Burke's office. He confesses that he's responsible for everything that has happened. He triggered the lockdown while attempting to copy the materials. Now he is in despair and feels like giving up. Claire shakes him, insisting that if the brain is like a machine, they can find a way to push it. Suddenly, Amir has an idea. They need to use a drug to slow down brain activity. It won't last long, but it could improve their condition. Claire rushes to inform the others, but Paul reveals what they've discovered about Amir. He searched Amir's belongings and found a stimulant that Amir had forbidden them to use. Just then, the bunker's lights go out. Paul remembers seeing an electrical panel in the MRI room, and they all hurry there. Unexpectedly, Paul falls silent. Claire uses her lighter to search for him, only seeing the faces of the dead in the flickering light. Finally, she locates the panel and restores the lights. Paul is sitting on the corridor floor, and Claire manages to revive him from his stupor. They gather around Amir and starts asking him some questions, but he denies using any stimulants. Rai becomes aggressive, and the men restrain Amir. He pleads with them to reconsider, insisting he hasn't done anything they accuse him of, including turning off the lights or knowing the location of the electrical panel. Rai suggests resorting to torture to extract the truth, but Claire intervenes, reminding them about the new drug Amir proposed. She offers to test it herself. Paul begins preparing the drug under Amir's guidance. Meanwhile, Vanessa reveals that she saw Rai turn off the lights. He manipulates her into believing he did it to force Amir to confess to working for Blackwood, and she shows him a sedative. If he distracts Claire, she plans to inject Amir, hoping that will reveal the truth. Amir explains the effects of the new drug, but warns that it's extremely dangerous and could be fatal. He admits he's read their files and recognized that they're all lonely, lacking friends or jobs, meaning no one would mourn their deaths. Paul announces that the drug is ready. Amir gives final instructions while Vanessa prepares the sedative in a syringe, but she suddenly collapses and begins to convulse. Paul drops the prepared drug as he rushes to help her, but she dies. Amir breaks down in despair. Claire stops him by holding a knife to his throat, and then steps into the corridor to clear her mind, only to find the lullaby growing louder. She records another message for her mother, reflecting on her mother's past behavior when drunk, but now she feels understanding. Claire collapses, sensing a force lifting her, leaving her unable to reach the last packet of salts. However, she regains her composure, grabs the salts, and suddenly hears a strange noise coming from the wall. She rushes back to the others, and she and Paul break through the wall, discovering a morgue. Meanwhile, Amir sees the ghost of Dr. Berg, who points to a nearby knife and urges him to take control. At the same time, Rye finds Amir's note confessing that the lockdown was his doing. Paul and Claire realize there's an elevator in the morgue for transporting bodies. Claire wants to go fetch the others, but Paul suddenly urges her to leave immediately. At the same time, Rye shows Amir the note. Amir screams as Rye grabs a scalpel, threatening him with a quick death. However, Amir manages to break free, stabbing Ray with a scalpel and finishes him off with a knife. Claire arrives and urges Amir to drop the knife, but he's lost touch with reality and chases after her. Paul, seeing this, quickly shuts the door behind Claire. Amir catches up to her, throws her onto the MRI table and raises the knife, but it becomes magnetized to the machine. Claire rushes to the elevator where Paul is already inside, but discovers it's actually a crematorium. Paul burns alive inside. Claire grabs a pair of scissors and waits for Amir, who is starting to lose his strength. Suddenly, he sees the door open and walks toward the light, only to be met by armed men at the entrance. Claire hears a gunshot, rushes to the door and sees black body bags. In a desperate move, she covers herself in blood and hides inside one of the bags. The bags are loaded into a truck, which drives away. As she thinks of Allison, she plays Tetris in her mind. Regaining consciousness, she manages to climb out of the bag. The guard next to the driver turns around, causing the driver to lose control, leading to a crash. Claire escapes the wreckage but collapses on the roadside after taking a few steps. Sometime later, Blackwood is cleared of any wrongdoing in the incident. 6 people are confirmed dead, and 1, Claire, is in a coma. Investigators conclude that Dr. Berg was conducting illegal research without the company's knowledge. With their reputation intact, Blackwood's leadership feigns mourning for the lost lives and expresses hope for future medical advancements. Just as the screen fades, Claire opens her eyes, and that's where the film ends. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video. Thanks for watching.